Hello everybody, here we are today talking about the Florida Panthers, a team that hasn't been all that scary over the past 10 games. But before we get started with it, please make sure to subscribe if you're new to me or hockey, whatever the case may be. That being said, let's get on into it. So Florida has been a team that in recent years has seen a ton of success during the regular season and postseason. In 2022, they won the President's Trophy. In 2023, they were Eastern Conference champions. And then in 2024, they won the Stanley Cup. So over the past 3 seasons, they have come to expect not just winning, but a lot of it. And I think entering this year, they probably were imagining another 50-plus win season. And I think that is a good goal for a lot of teams to kind of distinguish themselves between good sides and great sides and try to keep up where they are. Because right now, Florida wants to be where they're at in terms of being a contender year in and year out, especially over the past 3 seasons. But this is a team that isn't set to pass 50 wins. They're not even set to hit 50 wins at the moment, and they are looking like a side that probably won't go out there and even win their division this year. So what exactly is going on down in Florida right now? Well, for starters, they're not picking up a lot of W's as of late, as they've hit a bit of a rough patch. It's a small stretch, but over the past 10 games, they've gone 4-5-1, which ranks 24th in the league for points percentage. This is a run where it started off kind of in bad fashion. They played the Tampa Bay Lightning and the Montreal Canadiens and got outscored 8-0 in those 2 games. Both of those ended up being 4-0 losses. So to get a shutout, I should say, on back-to-back nights is really bad, but against your division rivals is not great. Tampa Bay, an in-state rival, Montreal, kind of the opposite of what we see here in terms of hockey culture and hockey tradition, and that is a tough way for things to go. Then they went on for their next 6 games to trade wins and losses before seeing what we saw here recently, where you had a game against the Philadelphia Flyers. They probably should have gone out there and won, ended up choking that in the 3rd, I believe, and then they played the New Jersey Devils, and it looked like they might have gone out there and lost again, which would have meant that they could have theoretically been 3-5-2. Altogether, though, you realize that they've got 4 wins over the past 10 games, and things aren't perfect. This isn't something where the fans are saying, oh boy, over the past 10 games, this is exactly what I want our organization to be playing like. And to talk about it, obviously some of the numbers aren't looking very good here. The penalty kill is one of those examples. They have allowed the 2nd most goals with guys in the box during this run with 9. They are just behind the New York Rangers, and this is a team that leads in penalty minutes over this stretch of time dating back to December 23rd by a healthy margin. They have 68 minutes over the course of these 10 games, and I think right behind them is the Carolina Hurricanes with 58. Just to give you an example of another team that they played here recently, the Philadelphia Flyers have played 11 games, so 1 game more than them, and they have just under 29 penalty minutes for the course of all this. So the PK is hurting them, but with other things as well you can look at that are pretty obvious. You could talk about the power play too, so special teams, another factor here with the man advantage, being they only have 4 goals over the past 10. When you are giving up 9 and you are only scoring 4, that's -5 right there. You've got to go out there and make that up. But I think a big problem that we're seeing here at the moment is the lack of offense over their past 10. They've got 5 games where they've scored 2 goals or less. And then when you look at their players in terms of points and all that, none of their stars are really having a great time. In fact, Sam Reinhart is probably the leader in that category of their true stars with 6 points during this stretch. A lot of these other guys have 5 points or less. That being said, I don't think I'm totally worried here. Their 5-on-5 numbers weren't too bad, and in general, you got to look at this as a kind of obvious thing. They obviously are in the playoff picture. They obviously are in a good spot as they're in 2nd in their division. And this is a team that really doesn't seem to be all that fazed by outside pressure. This is an organization that seems different than a lot of other teams. In fact, I would go out there and say that the 2024 Florida Panthers might have been one of my favorite Stanley Cup winners in recent years just because of the atmosphere. This is one of those teams that they don't mind a challenge. They don't mind things getting ugly. And they are a group that if they get punched in the face, they almost get energized off of that instead of being a team that might shy away from these things or, kind of just go out there and go into a shell. I think a team like Toronto is the perfect opposite of this. Whenever pressure seems to arise, they seem to kind of fold in that moment, whereas Florida has had some moments where they probably could have turned on each other and they didn't. So these are really good things, and I think one of the things we can highlight from this is Game 5 of the 2023 Stanley Cup Final. They lost in embarrassing fashion to the Vegas Golden Knights. Yes, they were banged up, but still, to lose that way was just absolutely brutal. Guess what? What did they do? They went out there and were able to use that as motivation to win the Stanley Cup for the first time in franchise history just a season later, when they could have had a whole offseason to say, I don't want to be around you guys. You guys are the problem, and I might want out of this organization. They didn't do that. And there's other factors too. Seeing the depth that they have, they are probably set to have 11 goal scorers past 10 goals or more in the season by the end of the year, as well as probably having at least 5 goal scorers that'll pass 20 goals for the season. You may not see somebody like Sam Reinhart go out and have a monster year like we saw last year in terms of points and whatnot. But again, just having that depth is nice. It may not be Dallas where they had 8 20 goal scorers, but Florida is looking very, very good. And you have to remember, they are still the defending champions. Not only that as well, too, you realize that they are a team that's set up in a good spot to go on and advance. It's not like they're the 16th seed and they're just holding on to the fact that they were champions last year and saying, rally, together. Instead, they are still probably going to have home ice advantage for a good chunk of the playoffs. Now, have they cooled off lately? The answer to that is pretty obvious, yes, but I'm not too worried about it. Again, I don't see them falling out of the top 2 in their division, and they are going to be playing a 3 seed that they should be better than. If Boston made it, I think they could just wail on them because, again, the Bruins have been in a bad spot. Montreal and some other teams like Detroit are really making that push for that 3 spot in the division, so we have to see how things play out there for them. But the Panthers are undoubtedly unfazed. I mean, you have to remember all the things that have gone on for some of these guys for a very long period of time before they found the success. 10 games is nothing to them, especially in recent years where they realized the only games that matter for 10 plus games in a stretch, as long as they make the playoffs, is of course the playoffs. So Florida, a team that isn't performing maybe as well as they had hoped, and the path to the Stanley Cup might be a little bit harder for them this season, as highlighted by what we've seen here recently, but I am not too concerned here. They're going to get their chance, and as long as they can get consistent goaltending, which I think could be a little bit of a concern, they should be all right. Do I think they're going to go out there and win the Stanley Cup? I don't think that I had them as my pick entering the season, and I'm not even sure if I picked them to make the Stanley Cup final. But with this group, with the attitude that they have, with the fact that they know they've been good enough to win the East back-to-back years, I don't think it's out of the question to say that they could win the East for a 3rd straight season, especially because I think there are some sides that are a little bit more pretender this year than contender, like maybe last year they looked a little bit better, so we'll have to see. But anyway, what are your thoughts on the Florida Panthers here recently? Do you think that the Panthers are still a Stanley Cup contender? Or do you think this recent 10-game spell is a sign of things to come to say, hey, the Panthers just might not be good enough to get the job done anymore? Let me know down below in the comments. Also, please make sure to like this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you're new. Everybody stay safe. Have a great night. And good luck, hockey, all right.
Goodbye, Brigadiers and Brigadettes. This is your captain signing off. Have a great night.